So, how important is it to know your comic history? Or maybe more to the point, how important is it to know famous comic artists or comic writers who have written or drawn some of the key pieces in comic history? The answer may surprise you. I don't think it's that important, but for a very specific reason. And I want to go into that. Hey everybody, this is Perch. What I kind of let in with probably surprises some people. If you go to conventions, you talk to creators, you talk to fans, you talk to comic shop owners, one thing becomes somewhat consistent. Not always, but somewhat consistent, and that's that you need to have a very healthy respect for what came before. And I think if you are a comic shop retailer, then you need to know your business. You do need to know that history. You need to know the comics. You need to have a good business mind, probably as a number one thing. But definitely the comic history, what's there, who's worked on what. I think all that's pretty critical. If you're a comic creator, if you're an editor especially, but if you're a writer, you're an artist, you need to know some of the history of the business you're working in. You need to, it's not okay if you're a comic editor and managing a line and you've never heard of Jack Kirby. Sometimes there's an editor on Marvel. That's Tom Brevoort. So I just say it there, who on Twitter will regularly there's a tweet account I think called the Spinner Rack, where they'll post up 4 comics from a particular era, usually like the 70s or 80s. And Brevoort will say, "I didn't buy any of these," or "Bought not a one." He says it flowery. And I always look at that, and he's trying to be kind of funny, but it doesn't come across that way. It comes across being kind of proudly ignorant of that past, which I think is weird. It's a weird message to send, particularly when you're an editor, you're somebody who's kind of an ambassador for your line. You're like, yeah, I didn't pay any attention to these comics in the 70s. I didn't buy any of these. Are you trying to say I'm not old? Is that what you're doing? Or it's a very confusing message, and I wish somebody would ask him that at a con sometime. But anyway, he gets angry, I hear, if you ask him that at a con, but just forewarned. But if you're a comic reader, if you're a fan, if you're somebody who's just trying to immerse in comics, then I've watched creators more than I've watched retailers. I've watched shops say, you really have to read Jack Kirby to understand this, or if you don't know who Neil Adams is and why he was so important to Batman, then you don't deserve to read Batman. And that is nonsense. I think as a fan, as a reader, you should be as educated or as knowledgeable as you want to be. Meaning, if you love comics, you're naturally going to go and find more comics, and you're going to go into history, and you're going to learn about the artists and other things. But you shouldn't feel shame if you, for example, do not like Jack Kirby. Some people have kind of made it a point to say, you have to respect Kirby, and if you don't, you're not a true comic fan. I want to hear from you. There are plenty of fans, especially modern fans, who are coming in who don't get it. In my shop, there's been a lot of younger fans who have come in and said, who is this Jack Kirby? I don't really even, and they like, I don't really like his style. Looks weird, looks dated, looks painful. And some people, you say that, it's like it's a heart attack. They're like, oh my God, I can't, I don't even want to serve you anymore. I don't want to. I don't. Your money is no longer welcome here. Get out. And the reality is, things change, times change. Everybody likes what they like. I mean, the best thing you can do for yourself as a fan is to know what you like and what you don't like, and be open to trying out new books. When I remember Preacher first came out as a concept, I liked Garth Ennis. I liked Steve Dillon. I didn't like the solicitation. I didn't like what I heard about it. It wasn't that I didn't like it. It wasn't for like a religious objection reasons. It did not sound interesting to me. I'm like, oh, there's a vampire and a preacher, and he's got some powers, and I don't know. I remember thinking at the time, like, can't Ennis just go back and do some Punisher? Or why? I don't want this. But then I read Preacher, and it was amazing. I think that was a great series, and I really enjoyed it. And so as long as a fan, you're open for that. You're open for new experiences. You're opening to kind of have a hunger to try new books, try new things. The idea that you have to immerse yourself in comic history just feels like gatekeeping to me. I think, and a lot of fandoms are that way. They require Like, well, if you have not watched all the Star Trek episodes and you don't really have any ground to stand on to say that Wesley sucks. And the reality is, you don't need to watch any Star Trek to know Wesley sucks. He sucks. There's nothing good about him. But now I'm blocked by that guy. I'm sure of it. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is I think comic history only matters as much as it matters to you. Meaning, if it enriches your enjoyment of comics, if you find that it broadens kind of what you like and provides good context, then yeah, by all means, immerse, and that's great for you, and you should absolutely do it. But there's no requirement to study up on famous comic artists or writers or anything. Again, way different story if you work in the business, you make your money there. Then you do need to kind of be educated on what you're doing. But for and by the way, some writers I know lately have started wearing as a badge of pride. It's like I don't really know any Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko, and I've never read a single thing by Stan Lee. I'm never going to. It's like I mean, you could take that stance. I don't really know what that's going to do for you. I mean, sure, this is the path you've chosen to make money? All right. I mean, whatever. But for fans, just read what you like. Get real clear on that. I don't think there's any requirement to know anything. I definitely think there's some comics that are like, the 100 comics you have to read before you die, and that'd probably be a pretty good video series. I mean, there's definitely some out there that I think are important for you to read, but don't. You should feel no pressure or no obligation that you have to read these in order to understand comics. That's not necessary. Anyway, that's what I think. What about you? Do you think it's a requirement to learn who some of these creators are, that you need to basically know the history before you can appreciate any of the history? Let me know in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts on it. It's an interesting one of those arguments in the comic shop that gets very, very emotional very, very quickly. Hey, like, subscribe, introduce to a friend if you haven't already. I'd love to have that network going. That's always awesome. Otherwise, hey, thanks for listening.